Hey guys, welcome to Coreskills, where I, Spencer, talk about sketching in a little bit broader sense than you're probably used to seeing me talk about. And today I'd like to talk about something that I get a lot of questions about from time to time, and that is what pen should I use? Um, Truthfully, there is no perfect pen. There's no one pen that I think is perfect for everyone. But in my experience over the years, I've come to love three particular pens. And I have them here with me. So the first is a Sharpie. Now, this is a fine point Sharpie. It's the ones that you find in any office supply store or big chain store, whatever, or even small mom and pop shop. You can probably find these. They're all over the place. But I really like them for just general sketching. If I'm just quickly throwing down an idea that I don't intend to apply marker to. And the reason I say that, and I'll show you on the overhead after this, is it has limitations. The next that I love is the Bic Cristal Pen, and this was introduced to me by a friend of mine. Shout out to Cameron Nielsen, recommended these. Um, but these pens are awesome if you like sketching with ballpoint pen. Again, I'll show you on the overhead as well. And the third is the Papermate Flair. You've probably seen me use these from time to time, and you'll get to see how I use them and why I use them, just with a simple demo here. But the important thing to remember is it's not about the pen so much as it is about the technique. So always draw with your shoulder, lock that wrist, use your elbow as a pivot. That's the first thing. But I think in developing your style, developing your sense of sketching, it's important to kind of have a go-to pen. And for me, that go-to pen is the Papermate Flair. But I do use these other pens from time to time, depending on the subject matter. If I'm sketching something that's a hard good versus a soft good, I may use a ballpoint versus a pen that'll give me a whole line like the Sharpie or the Papermate Flair, for example. So context is important, but also it's nice to have kind of a go-to pen that you can use to do anything. Okay, so let's switch the overhead and I'll show you kind of why I like these pens. Okay, so I've got my pens here. Again, Sharpie, Bic Cristal, and Papermate Flair. Now, the Sharpie doesn't have a super long life, but I like it because I'm able to get a nice variety of line weights from one pen. So, for example, if I were sketching something like just a quick athletic trainer, I can lay down a few lines just to get my template down, but then I can also come around the outside by tilting my Sharpie on its side. It's got that bullet tip, so as I tilt it, I can get a nice thick line, or if I sketch on a tip, I can get a thinner line, or at a slighter angle with some increased pressure, I get three different line weights. So 1, 2, 3. So super handy, right? And I can just quickly sketch in and add details as I want to. Right through here, for example. So just in terms of like getting a quick sketch down on paper, something rough that just captures an idea, I really like using my Sharpie for that, okay? And again, for the ability to just quickly throw down and add some line weight, or even things like shadow. It's driving me crazy. So fix that. And let's add some laces here. Okay. All right, so pretty straightforward with that Sharpie. You can see really easy to just have a nice, quick and dirty sketch using one Sharpie. Okay, now the downside to the Sharpie, however, I guess I'll show you that, is if I then apply marker to the Sharpie, and it's kind of hard to see, and it really doesn't show up unless I zoom in, and we do this for a while, but as I'm sketching on printer paper here, if I were to apply marker, you're going to get some bleed with the marker. And what you don't want to have happen is you don't want that Sharpie ink to interact with tip of your marker, because then it'll get smudged and dirty, and you'll be really ticked off when your $5 or $7 marker is completely ruined. So that is one downside to the Sharpie. Okay, up next we have the Bic Cristal Pen, and typically I'll use this pen if I'm doing something where I want to go light first until I get it right. Okay, so I'm just switching to kind of my default sketch here, which happens to be a car. I think everyone has some kind of sketch that they do by default, whether it's, in my case, a car, it might be, I don't know, a cell phone, I don't know, whatever. But I feel like we all have something that we just kind of sketch by default. In any case, you can see by varying the amount of pressure that I'm applying to this, I'm able to, or to the pen rather, I'm able to either have a light, or you'll see in just a sec here, a very heavy line. And I'm not going to finish out this entire sketch. I just wanted to show you how using just the ballpoint pen, I'm able to just kind of search out a design. Okay, so there it is, nice and light. And now, because this Bic Cristal, and this is the 1.6 millimeter tip, okay, so now I can apply some pressure and get these really cool heavy lines in here. And now my design can kind of pop as I start to apply some pressure, and even, you know, I can shade in certain spots, for example, if I want. And because it's a ballpoint pen, I can vary the pressure as I go. And if I want to apply shading on one side of the design, I can do that. Like so, and I can start to pop. Let's just do the outline here. Anyhow, hopefully you can see the idea that now I can start to pull those lines from the sketch. So that's why I like this pen, because it kind of functions in the same way that I would use a pencil. Now, unfortunately, let's zoom in so I can show you here. Unfortunately, if I apply marker, I am going to get bleed. Okay, it's very subtle, but it's going to happen, and it's going to diffuse over time as I do this. Now, it also will turn that marker ink blue. You can't see it here because I'm using a blue marker, but if I were to use a gray marker, for example, you'd see some bleed, and you can start to see the haziness a little bit through this. But if I were to use a gray marker, you would notice that there is some bluish haze that starts to form over your sketch. So that's the downside. Now on we go to the Papermate Flair. This is the pen that I use most of the time. So let's say I'm sketching. My style is a lot different, or rather similar to the sketch that we did with the Sharpie, where I was using whole lines, but you can see that I'm able to just use that whole line to my advantage. So similarly to the Sharpie, if I sketch with the tip of this pen, I get one line weight, slight angle, 2, and for the third line weight, I just like to hit the same line a few times. So I get 1, 2, 3 different line weights with the same pen. So I like the versatility of this particular pen. Okay, so if we're sketching something like just a quick flashlight concept, okay, I can use that line weight to my advantage to pull out details as necessary.
And personally, I just like the effect of it, okay? But on top of all this, what I do like about the Flair, let's add some knurling on this particular piece. And maybe a lanyard or a loop of some sort. Quick and dirty. Okay, but what I do like about this pen is that with marker, it does not bleed. Okay, so as compared to the ballpoint pen and the Sharpie, I'm not going to get any bluing of the ink. I'm not going to get any bleed. It just stays. And I like that because most times I am going to be applying some marker to my analog sketch. And so I need to be able to use pens that allow me to do that. If I do use a Sharpie, however, I can always come back and use it after my marker is done. Okay, so if I'm going to use the Sharpie, make sure you use it as a final step and not as your first step. However, if you don't anticipate using a Sharpie, you can use it, or using a marker rather, you can use a Sharpie first, and then you don't have to worry about any of that bleed. Okay, so these are my 3 pens that I tend to use when sketching analog. Again, there is no such thing as the perfect pen, but really it's about what works for you as a designer or artist and what you're comfortable with. I recommend, have one pen that works for you. Something that you can rely on, something that you're comfortable with, build up competency, and then kind of expand that to something a little familiar. So in my case, expanding to the Sharpie, and then also developing skills with another pen should you choose to use one. Okay, well that's it for our episode of Coreskills today. Hopefully you've been able to learn something about your materials. I'd love to hear about the pens that you use. I'm kind of a pen addict personally, so feel free to leave a comment below. I'd love to check them out. I'll also see if I can include a link to these pens, so if you're interested in picking those up, you can. You can always find me online at sketchaday.com on Instagram, or sketchaday.com, literally, just Google it. Or you can also go to youtube.com/sketchaday and find me there. Well, we'll see you next time here on Coreskills, and if you have any suggestions on what you'd like to see, feel free to leave those in the comments as well. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.